Woohoovians, and welcome back to Tom's Comedy Club. Woohoo! We're back on the
Oh,
second series of the series Joking Apart. Yes, we're back, and we're back in the warmth because if you saw the last episode of Joking Apart, it was kind of cold. Yes, it was. That tram behind me was freezing. It was shivering, and so we're here with another wonderful guest. Now, if you've been watching my interviews so far this year, you have known that there's a breadth of amazing people coming from depending on where are you looking in the UK, at the top or the bottom, depending on which angle you're heading from. But I am, of course, talking about the wonderful Scotland. Now, today I've got a very special guest. She's best known as appearing on multiple different amazing TV shows and being a wonderful comedian. It's the one and only Jojo Sutherland.
hello, 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 hello. Howdy, partner.
And so we'll start at the very beginning of your career. How did you get into this career path called comedy?
That is a very good question, and not one that I intended to pursue at all. I did a comedy course, but only because I trained as an actor when I was younger, and then sort of got married, had kids, and then I was really ill. I had a brain hemorrhage when I was 34, and I just had that thing of going, do you know what? I want to get back into acting. And it'd been quite a while I'd been out of it. And so I saw this advert for stand-up comedy course. I thought, oh, that'll look good on my acting CV because comedy's really revered because it's really hard. And yeah, never intended to be a stand-up. Did a course, did 5 minutes. That was nearly 23 years ago, and here I am. I gig all over the world now.
Yeah. And when you joined the local or the wider comedy circuit, what was
Hmm.
the comedy circuit like when you joined it?
Do you know what? It's always been really welcoming and really cool, and quite rock and roll. Certainly within, with my peers and colleagues. But it was definitely more difficult in terms of audiences just assumed that if you were a woman, you were unfunny. So there was that, they assume audiences assume men are funny until they prove otherwise. They assume women are unfunny until they prove otherwise. So funny's funny, but it definitely felt like you could audibly hear a groan when your name was in here. Oh God, it's a woman. And that's got better. It's not completely away. But you know what? It was just exciting. It was just meeting just like-minded people with a sort of different view on life, and yeah, I found my tribe when I started hanging out with other comedians.
Yeah. And when you're performing your comedy, do you utilize the Billy Connolly method, walking on, saying whatever you think of, then forgetting it, and then never be able to repeat ever again? Or do you meticulously write down or type down all your jokes so you memorize them?
So from the beginning, I've changed over time. When I first started, I was amazed that people didn't just think off the top of their head. I saw a comedian twice in a row. And went, oh my God, they've said the same thing. So I was very much the just went on with whatever was in my head. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Then I got sort of, people were saying, oh, you should, have a few ideas of what you're going to talk about, write down some jokes. And I've never really written anything down. I tend to write on stage and then write it down afterwards. Go, oh, that was good, Um, but recently I have, since I went to Australia last year for the first time, and because I was doing 8 gigs a day, I was just like, I had to really focus on what I was saying.
Yeah.
So I became quite disciplined. It's taken me a long time to become like quite disciplined to know, yep, you open with that joke, you say that one, then this one, then that, then you end on that. But I still like going on with an empty head, to not quite, do you know what I mean? Just mid conversation, I might have seen somebody at the bar or been outside having a cigarette, and I'll kind of talk about that as soon as I go on, and then become more material based.
Yeah. And one of the things you've done that BBC Scotland love to re-air and re-air because it is incredible and it's endless barrels of laughs. What was it like being on the TV programme growing up Scottish?
Oh gosh, yes. So yeah, yeah, do you know what? It's one of those programs, they ask you questions that you kind of go, oh God, yeah, no, I'd forgotten about that. What did I do when I was little? And, and what was Christmas like? And, what sort of games did we play? And so it was sort of those memories of reminding me that we used to do country dancing on a Wednesday at school. And, you kind of, there's bits of your life you forget about because they were so long ago. And so that program was great for just kind of, yeah, jogging the memory to some really nice memories, actually. It was funny.
Yeah. And it's a very good program, and it deserves to come back for more new episodes. If the BBC are watching. And one of the things you've done that it's getting like a lot of attraction and more people are doing it. It's turning on to TV and it's becoming this institute of one of the greatest, getting in the top 10 list of greatest panel shows of all time. What was it like appearing on the amazing Breaking the News?
Well, again, it's one of those things that you have to kind of, you have to have your wits about you. It's very topical. It's that week's news. You only get really sort of 24 hours to prepare. Um, but radio's great. And it was great being in the studio doing it because you can see other people and you can kind of get some, good eye contact and rapport going with the other guests. So but yeah, I mean, I do love it when it is just in the moment, and also those jokes that really only have a really short shelf life.
Mm.
I quite like writing to a specific brief
Yeah.
to find, on a specific subject or about a specific topic that's only going to be, you're going to have to, throw it away because it'd be like tomorrow, tomorrow's newspapers, yeah, chip paper.
Yeah. And why do you reckon that Breaking the News is becoming so like even more popular than it already is?
I think because the actual news is so depressing that any opportunity to kind of get some comedic take on it, or just have a bit of a poke a bit of fun at the news and things that are also serious. The world is so serious. There's so much awful things going on. I'm a big believer in if you can find humor to make it more palatable, then that's the way to do it. And I think people
Yeah.
like that.
And when you're, because you've done so much on TV and so much on radio, do you listen to yourself or watch yourself back, or do you just run the other direction until it's all over?
No, I'm a narcissist. I like to listen to myself. Or is it, what is it? Yeah. I do like to watch back and hear what I've done. And it's I can always tell if I've done a good job or not. You can tell anyway, but if I can listen back or watch back and enjoy it, I'm like, oh, that's all right. But there are some clips and some footage from comedy clubs that I never want to see the light of day again because I just cringe when I watch it. I'm like, oh my God, that was so awful. But everybody has to start somewhere.
And one of the things that you're currently working on, because it's not yet been published, what's it like working on your own radio series?
So I've recorded a radio series that's going to go out on Radio 4 in August. So that is in the can, as they say. And that was really great fun. And I was quite a diva when I was recording that because I wanted to say it a specific way. And, I maybe did it not quite how I thought I was going to say it. So I was like, no, can we do that again, please? So that was really good fun. And it was written to within an inch of its life because it was specifically for radio, had to be 27 minutes and 40 seconds. But the show that I'm writing at the moment is my new stand-up show, which I'm taking to the Melbourne Comedy Festival end March, April, which is called I Wish You Were My Mum. So that's just in the process because often I get people coming up to me after a gig going, oh my God, I wish you were my mum. Or people that come up and go, oh, thank God you're not my mum. Or my own children who are just like, well, why are you my mum? So it's just it's a sort of comedic look at relationships with mothers,
Yeah.
and careful what you wish for.
Yeah. And do you reckon that because of the way that the English, like British comedy, which includes Scotland, and
Yeah.
Australian comedy is so similar. Do you reckon that makes it easy if, when you go over to perform in Australia because their comedy style isn't too different to our own?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of similarities. Australia sort of slightly strikes me as being a little bit 30 years that away, but they still got quite they remind me of 1970s Britain. So um but yeah, I mean it is, we do have a very similar sense of humor. And I think the world over we have a genuine bond when we talk about families or relationships or things that annoy us. And there's a commonality in lots of humor that we share.
Yeah. And a lot of people that are watching this might want to get into comedy. What advice would you give like up and coming or like current era comedians about doing comedy?
Don't. No, I'm joking. No, seriously, I think stand-up comedy should be on the National Health Service. I think it should be like conscription. You should be forced to do stand-up comedy. Just because it's such a great way to express yourself. And I think anybody that wants to try it, just, it's that real kind of like doing a bungee jump. Just go to your local comedy club, find out where there's an open mic, put your name down, have a few ideas, and just do it. Just go and do it. Because it's such an exhilarating feeling. I think people think when they start comedy, got a laugh every 30 seconds, and it's got, even if you go up, talk for 2 or 3 minutes and get one laugh, just to have the experience of that, you'll know instantly if it's for you or not.
Yeah. And one of the things you've done that is quite good. That was a better word than most words.
Quite good.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll go with quite, Tom.
yeah. What was it like working on the radio series Jailmates?
Oh, right. Yes, that was Gary Little, wasn't it? Gosh, now you're reminding me of things that I'd forgotten I'd done. Well, Gary Little is such an incredible storyteller, and he's a good friend of mine. He's a superb comedian. So yes, it was something that I was casted and invited to be part of. So it's always a pleasure, and it's sort of a little bit of acting chops as well. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, and because of the way that comedy works and the radio, even though people might think it's a dying medium, it really isn't. It's like a
no, not at all.
what do you reckon that radio and TV are a good way for people to show off their stuff rather than just doing like one medium, doing both rather than just one?
Oh, I think, yeah. I mean, because every medium is a different skill set. Television, because of the visual aspect, versus radio, or whether it be a podcast, any kind of, it's really interesting because you do have to adapt and present in a slightly different way. That, yeah, it makes you an all-round performer if you can sort of thrive in all of them.
Yeah, and with your career as you're soaring upwards because you're about there, I would say. Um, what
It's
is
very
there a
kind.
particular program on either TV, radio that you're aspiring to be on, or are you just not? Are you just gonna go with the flow?
Go with the flow. Yeah, I think if you plan too much, then you might be disappointed. And I'm a big believer. I go with my gut and what feels right. So and things. It's like, even though I've recorded this radio special for Radio 4, there's a little bit of me goes, oh, I know I've recorded, I've been certainly been paid for it, but until I actually hear it on the radio, I won't quite believe it. So I think it's always good just to keep an air of, flexibility and go with the flow, not quite sure what's happening next.
Yeah,
Um, just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
yeah. And with a lot of comedians these days, we're moving with the times of releasing specials like when they did on VHS, DVD
Yeah.
to streaming. Do you reckon that YouTube, because it's a free platform, is still a good way to have the special, or do you reckon that's gonna like diminish it a little bit because not many people are gonna then pay for the specials because they're free on YouTube?
Well, that's again, I'm a bit late to the party, Tom. I've just loved being a comedian. I don't really think about what the next career move is. And genuinely, I came back from Australia April 23, my son-in-law, who's also a comedian, Gareth Much, he'd done his special on YouTube. And I was just kind of chatting to him about it. I was like, and he was like, you really should just record it. Had never crossed my mind. And you know what? It was a great thing to do. And I think to build an audience, and people will come and see you if they really want to see you. And I think having something out on YouTube, loads of comics are doing that, and it's more about building a following, and then they'll come and see your live shows. And I mean, realistically, I mean, if you've got Netflix, I mean, maybe I'll get a Netflix special, but they'll people will pay if they want to see it, but also they should be available for people who don't want to pay. So
Yeah. And do you reckon that because of like the evolution of online, do you reckon that that helps more people feel like it's comedy's more welcoming to join rather than having to be in front of people?
yes, I think so. I think this weirdly, I find it odd with online because things like YouTube or Netflix or Amazon Prime, we all seem to end up all watching the same things. Things seem to just, there does seem to be a focus whichever medium you're on. So I think, yeah, I think it's about connecting with an audience whichever way you can. And then, yeah, online seems like it's a vast platform, but then, something will go viral and everybody's seen the same one picture, thing of a cat. Like, incredible.
Yeah. And and do you reckon that with the evolution of the way everything, do you reckon that comedy is always going to be like top dog within the industry of people loving it?
I hope so. I really do. But I mean, I think just in a very simplistic view, I think comedy is one of those art forms that humanity will always need.
Yeah.
And I think that by its very nature, it will survive and be a forerunner because it makes people feel better.
Yeah.
So, and people always want to have a laugh.
Yeah. And one of the radio things you've done that whether or not this is accurate, because I know the British comedy guys sometimes get things wrong,
Okay.
because there's sometimes someone's got a similar name and they've probably mistyped it in. What was it like working on the series Comedians at the Kings?
That was fantastic. And that was where age was my benefit, because the Comedians at the Kings was recorded specifically with comedians who were over 50.
Yeah,
So it was very much, um, you know, yeah, celebrating the older comic. Because, like every business, there's sexism, there's ageism, there's homophobia, there's misogyny, there's racism. And so, yeah, it was a very deliberate project for comics over 50. And yeah, it was great. And it was, the comics that have featured on it, all really good mates of mine and all great comics. So, yeah, very proud to be part of that.
and with all these things that come out and all these different types of ways of people getting it, is it good that comedy isn't age? Like, there's no barrier when you can start comedy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is what's great about it. I mean, you'll always get within any kind of society sort of these little pockets of people go, oh, oh, you're not funny because you're a woman, or you're not funny because you're old. But the reality is that yeah, stand-up comedy has got there's no bar to entry. Anybody can do it.
Yeah,
Nothing should stop you from being able to do it.
yeah.
So
And one of the things you've done that, in my opinion, if the BBC keep it long enough, might become the new version of Like the Apollo. What would they like doing comedy underground?
see, again, it was a real kind of celebration of Scottish comedy as well. And we forget we're such a tiny little country, and we've produced so many incredible talents. And Comedy Underground, again, it was one of those really good projects that sort of unearthed and gave a platform and more visibility to people who, ordinarily were getting sort of overlooked. So yeah,
Yeah,
very good fun.
yeah. And do you reckon that over the next, because of the way that more people and its accessibility to see these things are becoming more like wide, do you reckon that Scottish comedians are going to become like more well known on the screen and more like ones that you would have seen on like in a normal club, but will become a little bit more as seen on screen?
I think so. And I mean, Scottish comics at the moment are knocking it out of the park. Literally, there's a plethora of, really good comics. There's, Jay Lafferty, and obviously Janie Godley, and Christopher McArthur Boyd, Mark Jennings, Steve Buchanan, Mark Nelson, Ray Bradshaw, all these acts that have got their own YouTube specials that and ordinarily Scottish acts were a bit loath to go down south gigging and so we're sort of stuck up in Scotland for a bit. And I think because of online, then they're getting a much further reach to bigger and wider audiences.
And because of the way, because comedy is like so vast and so wide, do you reckon that like comedy is becoming a little bit more like broader because it's obviously in the 80s people were trying to find new ways. Do you reckon that because of now that people are doing so many different types of comedy, it's going to become that comedy isn't just one type of thing, it can't be stereotyped.
Um, yeah, I think there's obviously everything goes through, change, and there's, different styles, and things become popular or go out of style. But I think, we're maybe a little bit in danger of people editing too much in their heads, because I always say with comedy, you should only joke about what makes you laugh, and you can't try and second guess what's going to make an audience laugh. In the same way, you can't try and second guess what an audience is going to be offended by. So I think comedy, you should always be able to justify the jokes that you tell. I don't think there's anything you can't joke about. Um, but I think that comedy's got better at being more mindful without being patronizing.
Yeah. And do you reckon that the Edinburgh Fringe is becoming is still as popular as it ever is, or do you reckon that more people are slowly going to all these other comedy festivals?
That's again an interesting one. I mean, I've got a big soft spot in my the heart for the Edinburgh Fringe. It's my home. I've been there, going there for 20, 30 years. I grew up with it. It's so expensive, but it's been so expensive forever. I mean, that conversation of accommodation and all this kind of stuff. But I think there's always a place for festivals because, again, it's nothing. I mean, as much as you've got online television, radio, nothing does beat being in a room with a performer and seeing something live, because you never quite know what's going to happen. And it's great when something does happen that can't get edited out because it's not that format, and you witness or you're part of something that won't be ever seen again. And I think festivals like Edinburgh always have that magic to them that you can't get anywhere else. So I think it will always survive. But how, if it gets too big and bursts, I think there's always a place for that.
Yeah. And do you reckon that because of the way that comedy can be spread around the world, do you reckon that that's why a lot of like English and British and Scottish and all sorts of comedians are going around to all these countries that you wouldn't have expected to enjoy these type of comedians?
Yeah, I mean, comedy comedy loves travel. Um, and I mean, I love going. I've been out in the Middle East. I've been in Australia and yeah, Barcelona and Berlin and Iceland, Austria, and yeah, there's again, it's that just being somewhere different and find it again. You sometimes, when I was in Berlin, I didn't think my stuff was particularly parochial or, but you just do think, even mentioning something like EastEnders, you go, I've got a clue what I'm talking about. And so I like that you have to, yeah, widen your horizons and take in much more, yeah, other cultures.
And would you say that language is a barrier, or would you say that because of the way comedy is, language doesn't always matter that much?
Do you know, that's a really good question because a friend of mine, Gus Limburn, just for silly nonsense, he went on stage. He said, "I'm not going to tell you jokes. I'm going to pretend I'm speaking a foreign language." And he did, and I was like, "Oh, Gus, what are you doing?" I mean, it was an experimental night, but even
Yeah.
still, I was like, "Oh my god!" But he was like, "Ah, blah, 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 blah." And you know what? People were laughing just because it's the rhythm and the silliness is, and I think you can tell. You know, again, we all laugh in the same language, but I think the rhythm of comedy and just facial expressions sometimes you can, yeah, you can overcome, language barriers to still joke about something.
And people got this far in the interview. Are you on tour, or are you going anywhere where people can either buy tickets or just see you?
I am currently doing tour support for Jonathan Pye, which is a massive treat. I'm delighted to be asked back to do that. So the Jonathan Pye Heroes and Villains tour is on until the 24th of March in venues all around the UK. So I'm doing tour support. I will be in Melbourne from the 27th of March till the 22nd of April with my solo show, I Wish You Were My Mum, which will be on at the Oxford Scholar in Melbourne. And then when I come back, I'll be in comedy clubs around the country, and then at the festival with I Wish You Were My Mum. So, and then hopefully a tour later in the year, but nothing signed on paper yet.
Yeah. And where can people find you to keep up with all your stuff? To don't give away your home address.
Well, I don't have one, Tom. I gave up my home nearly 2 years ago, so I've been on the road. So Jojo Sutherland in any form. I'm either Jojo.Sutherland or Jojo Sutherland or Jojo Sutherland dot. Or, so yeah, anywhere on Instagram, Twitter. I know it's called X, but no one's ever going to call it that. Facebook, I'm Jojo Sutherland comedian, and yeah, my YouTube. I've got my YouTube special, "Growing Old Disgracefully." The special's on YouTube, so check that out. And then my Riches to Rags coming to a Radio 4 station in August.
Yeah. And even Google doesn't call X X because Google calls it in brackets Twitter.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Not not even anyone wants to call it X. So thank you for letting me interview you.
Thank you for interviewing me, Tom. That was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And thank you guys for watching. Now, Joking Apart will return in any format it likes. Obviously, it's a podcast, so return in audio, but the visual format, depending on whether or not I am sat in the warmth or looking like I'm going to freeze my ears off, will happen in any format you like. So if you want to see my ears turn blue, then well, I live in the UK, so that could happen any day of the week. I could walk outside right now and probably turn blue. Uh, who knows what the weather's like?
Yeah.
We don't live in the Bahamas, but
No, sadly not.
yeah, sadly not. But anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. Time out. Bye.